A man is standing on a ladder in Cairo, changing a light bulb. Below him, in a glass case, is the most photographed object ever made by human hands. 900 people a day come to stand in front of it. And something goes wrong up on that ladder, and the beard comes off in his hand. Solid gold, 5.5 pounds of it, off. Now put yourself in that room. You have just broken the face of ancient Egypt, and the museum opens in the morning. So they fixed it with epoxy, hardware store epoxy, and when it's squeezed out around the join, they scraped the excess away with a spatula and left scratch marks in 3,000-year-old gold. 8 men were referred to trial for that. A year later, a proper team came in to undo it. German conservators, Egyptian conservators, working slowly. They took the epoxy off, and then they reattached the beard the correct way, using the adhesive the Egyptians had used in the first place, beeswax. They had held a pharaoh's face together with beeswax, and it lasted 33 centuries, and it took a man on a ladder to break it. But that is not the interesting part, because before they touched anything, the conservators did a full 3-dimensional scan, and inside the beard, where nobody had looked in 3,000 years, they found a gold tube, a sleeve, running up into the mask, holding the beard on. Nobody knew it was there, and that is the thought I cannot get out of my head. This is the single most examined artifact on Earth. Millions of photographs. And there was a piece of engineering inside it that no one had ever seen. So what else is in there? Because when people started asking that question seriously, they came back with an answer nobody wanted. The face on that mask. It might not be his. I'm Cole. This is Case 19. Let's go look at the gold. Somebody made this thing. Not a factory. A man in a workshop. In the 14th century before Christ. And he knew something you would only know if you had spent your life doing it, which is that you cannot build this out of pure gold. Pure gold is too soft. Hammer it into a face, and the face sags. So he mixed copper into it, just enough to stiffen it. 23 karat instead of 24. And then he beat 2 sheets of that alloy out to somewhere between 1.5 and 3 millimeters. And he shaped a king's face out of it, and the whole thing came to 22.5 pounds. That is a craftsman making a decision. And we know he made it, because in the last 20 years, people have put X-ray beams on that mask. Nothing scraped, nothing sampled, nothing removed. A beam 2 millimeters wide, and you read what comes back. Which is how we found the problem. The surface is not the same all over. The headdress, the shoulders, the body of the mask, they carry a 22.5 karat surface, warm, gold-colored. What you picture when you picture that mask. The face and the neck carry something else, 18 karat, with more silver in it, a whitish gold, which means the face of Tutankhamun is a slightly different color from the rest of Tutankhamun. You have looked at that mask your whole life and never noticed, and neither had anyone else. Because a photograph flattens it, and museum lighting is designed to make gold look like one thing. But in the room, at the right angle, it is there. And on paper, in the numbers, it is not subtle at all. In 2024, a team at the University of York, led by an Egyptologist named Joanne Fletcher, put that measurement together with a few other things and said the quiet part. The face was made separately, and then it was put on. Their word for it was grafted. Tutankhamun's face, grafted onto somebody else's mask. Now, if I stopped here, you would walk away certain, and I would be doing the exact thing I keep accusing other people of doing. So let me introduce you to the man most likely to be right about this. And he disagrees. His name is Christian Ekman. He is a metal conservator, and he is the one who actually took that beard off. He cleaned the epoxy out with his own hands. He put the beeswax back. Nobody alive has spent more time touching this object. And Ekman's finding is this: yes, it is made in 2 pieces, but that is simply how you made a mask like this. 2 pieces is normal. It is not a clue. And when he went looking for the evidence of a replaced face, he did not find it. So, hold both. A measurement everyone agrees on. And 2 serious people who cannot agree what it means. Keep that in your pocket, because the next piece of evidence is the one this case is named for. A British Egyptologist named Nicholas Reeves is doing something that sounds like nothing. He is looking at photographs, not digging, not scanning, looking, for months. Very high-resolution images of things everybody has already seen, going over them the way you would go over a road map with your face 6 inches from the page. And on the mask, he stops on a cartouche. A cartouche is just an oval. The Egyptians drew a loop of rope around a king's name so that you would know, reading it, that this was a royal name and not a word. Every pharaoh has one. They are all over that mask. Reeves looks at this particular one and says this has been recut. Not damaged, not worn, worked over. Somebody took a tool to the gold, took a name out, and put a different name in. And underneath Tutankhamun's, Reeves says he can still see traces of what was there first. Ankh Keper U Re, Nefer Nefer U Aten, which is a mouthful, so let me tell you what it means. It is a king's name, and the grammar in it is feminine, a woman, ruling Egypt, as pharaoh, not as somebody's wife. And the leading candidate for who she was is the most famous woman in Egyptian history, Nefertiti, ruling in her own right after her husband died, her mask on his face. And I have to be straight with you about the size of that claim, because it is not settled. Whether those cartouches were recut is a judgment call about scratches in gold. Reeves looks and sees it. Other Egyptologists look at the same photographs and do not. The literature describes it honestly as subjective. And there is a serious argument that Nefer Nefer Uaten was not Nefertiti at all, but one of her daughters. So on the mask itself, I cannot close this. Nobody can. Here is what I can close. There is a French Egyptologist named Marc Gaboldi who disagrees with Reeves about nearly all of this. Different woman, different reading, different conclusion, opposing camp, and not quietly. And Gabold took a gold pectoral out of that same tomb, a chest ornament, the kind of thing you would be buried wearing. And he demonstrated, to everyone's satisfaction, that Tutankhamun's names on it are sitting directly on top of hers. The 2 men who cannot agree about the mask agree about that. So the mask is an open question. The burial is not. Somebody put a boy king into a dead woman's funeral, and they were in enough of a hurry that they did not finish covering their tracks, which raises a worse question. Why the hurry? Because it is not only the objects, it is the room. Every pharaoh in the Valley of the Kings got a tomb built like a statement, long descending corridors, chamber after chamber, decorated wall to wall. And they started building it the day they took the throne, because that is how long it took. Tutankhamun got 4 small rooms, plain, cut in stages, as though the plan kept changing halfway. Dug low into the floor of the valley instead of up into the good rock. It is so modest that Howard Carter, standing inside it, said it did not feel like a pharaoh's burial chamber. And it turns right. That sounds like nothing. In 18th dynasty tomb design, it might not be. Reeves argues that a corridor tomb making a rightward turn to the burial chamber is a queen's tomb. Kings turn the other way. I will tell you plainly that Egyptologists are split on it. Some think the right turn means a woman. Some think it means nothing at all. And there is a third reading, which is that this tomb was never royal in the first place, that it was cut for some official, and a dead teenage king got put in it because it was the hole that was available. Now look at the wall. On the west wall of that little chamber, there are 12 baboons. They come from a funerary text called the Amduat, and they are the 12 hours of the night, sitting as sentries along the road the sun has to travel to be reborn in the morning. 12 baboons. And there is exactly one other tomb in that entire valley with the same 12 baboons on the wall. It belongs to the man who buried him. His name was Ai. He was old. He was not the king's son, and he took the throne when the boy died. His tomb is large, proper, kingly. And the current reading is that it was being built for Tutankhamun, and it simply was not finished because nobody expected to need it yet. He was 19, and this is the part I keep coming back to. We talk about King Tut like he is a treasure. He was a kid with a cleft palate and a club foot who walked with a cane. His body carried malaria. He almost certainly broke his leg in a fall. And a 19-year-old with a wrecked immune system and a broken femur in the 14th century before Christ does not recover from that. He died in the middle of somebody else's plan, and they buried him fast, in a small room, in a woman's coffin, wearing a face we cannot prove was made for him. One more thing about that room, because this is where it got loud. Reeves said that if Nefertiti had been walled up inside this tomb, there would be a chamber behind the plaster. So they scanned it with radar, and a specialist reported it was 90% likely something was back there, and it was in every newspaper on Earth. Then a second team scanned it and could not reproduce the result. Then a third team went in with better equipment and settled it. There is no chamber, there is no doorway. There is solid rock behind that wall. He was wrong. But being wrong about the wall is not the same as being wrong about the objects. Those are two different arguments, and the objects are still sitting there with somebody else's name under them. Because here is what happens next. Someone comes along and takes his name too. Two men took Tutankhamun apart. They were 3,000 years apart, and neither of them thought he was doing anything wrong. The first one had a chisel. After I died, the throne went to a general, a soldier named Horemheb. Not royal, no claim by blood, career military, and Horemheb had a problem, because the previous 40 years had been a religious catastrophe. Tutankhamun's father had shut the temples, abolished the old gods, moved the capital into empty desert, and told a country of millions that everything they believed was wrong. Egypt hated it. So Horemheb did not reverse it. He deleted it. He went to Karnak and to Luxor and had the cartouches cut out of the stone and his own name put in. He took Akhenaten. He took Neferneferuaten. He took Smenkhkare. He took Tutankhamun. And he took Ai. 5 pharaohs. Gone. If you want to see how completely it worked, there is a wall at Abydos with a king list carved into it. The official record of who ruled Egypt in order. You can walk up to it. And on that wall, Amenhotep III is followed immediately by Horemheb, 4 decades of kings, and the list simply skips them. And feel how unfair the Tutankhamun part of that is, because Tutankhamun is the one who fixed it. He was the boy who reopened the temples and gave the old gods their names back. He did the exact thing Horemheb wanted done. He got erased anyway, not for anything he did, for who his father was. He was 19, he had been dead a few years, and a soldier who never met him scratched his name off the walls of his own country. The second man had hot knives. 1925. Howard Carter's team finally opens the innermost coffin and the mummy is stuck to the bottom of it. 3,000 years of poured funerary oils had hardened into something like tar and glued the body and the mask into the gold. So they carried the coffins out into the courtyard and left them in the midday sun until they reached 149 degrees, hoping the heat would loosen it. It did not, so they used hot knives. They took the head off, they took the limbs off, they cut the torso apart at the hips. The anatomist opened an incision around the jaw and across the throat so he could see the teeth, then closed it again with resin. And there is a photograph from that room of Tutankhamun's skull, propped upright on a spike, so the camera could see the face. That is not the photograph Carter printed. For his book, he chose a different one, with the head wrapped in cloth, hiding the severed spine. He tidied the boy up before he showed him to us. So, a general took his name, and an archaeologist took his body. And I do not think either of them believed they were doing harm. Horemheb was saving Egypt from a heresy. Carter was rescuing a king from obscurity. They did more damage between them than 3,000 years in the ground. And yet he is the most famous Egyptian who ever lived. Before I tell you why, let me clear one thing off the table. You have heard about the curse, Lord Carnarvon dying of an infected mosquito bite, the lights going out across Cairo, the dog howling in England at the exact moment its master's heart stopped. Somebody actually checked. A doctor named Mark Nelson took the 44 Westerners who were in Egypt at the relevant time, worked out which 25 of them had genuinely been exposed to that tomb, and then followed every one of them to the end of their life. The exposed group's average age at death was 70. The unexposed group's was 75. 5 years apart on a sample that small is not a curse. It is not a pattern. It is not anything. Those men lived to 70 in the 1920s, which is longer than most of their countrymen managed. Howard Carter, who opened the thing, went on another 16 years. You will also find people who have decided the answer must be radiation, uranium in the burial chamber, toxic gas. It is not. There is nothing here to explain, and inventing a science-flavored curse to replace a supernatural one is just the same mistake in a lab coat. The real question is not why they died. It is why there was anything left to find, because he was robbed. Twice, within a few years of the funeral, officials came in, repacked the mess, filled the corridor with limestone chips and sealed it. Thieves burrowed through the fill. It was sealed again. That should have been the end of it. In that valley, everything gets stripped eventually. Every other pharaoh's tomb was emptied to the walls. Then, 200 years later, a work crew arrived to cut a tomb for Ramesses VI, further up the slope. And they built their huts on the ground above Tutankhamun's door, threw their rubble down the hill. The floods came through the valley and packed it all in solid. They buried the entrance, by accident. Nobody found it again for 3,000 years. And when Carter's men finally did find it, they found the top step of that staircase while they were clearing away those workmen's huts. So here is the file. A 19-year-old boy who limped, buried in a hurry in a room that was not his, in a coffin that was not his, under a face we cannot prove, was ever made for him, deliberately erased by a soldier who wanted the whole era gone, and then saved completely by accident by a work crew who dumped their garbage on his door. 2 men set out to make Tutankhamun disappear. A third buried him without meaning to, and the one who did it by mistake is the only reason we have any of it. He is famous because they tried to erase him. The erasure is what saved him. I'm Cole. This was Case 19. 900 people a day stand in front of that mask and photograph the face of ancient Egypt. The face is a different color from the rest of it. You can measure that. And I still do not know whose face it is.